It was a sunny day, the day before his high school graduation ceremony. But without any warning, he suddenly fell out of consciousness, leaving his body behind. He found himself falling into deep darkness, and soon he realized he was in hell. There was no limit to his panic as he saw creepy monsters devouring each other right in front of him. The place was meaningless, soaked in blood, and he couldn't understand why he ended up there. The thought did not give him any peace. 10 days had passed, and he was insanely hungry. There was no day or night in this place, no sunlight. And now he found meat, but all he could eat was the rotting meat left by the monsters. It tasted awful, but he needed to eat it to survive. He had to adapt to this cruel place. One day, when he was carelessly eating meat, he was attacked by a huge monster. He did not lose his head and fought back with the nearest stones he could find. From that moment on, he knew he had to fight to survive. Tears poured out of his eyes as the guy missed his family very much. On the 39th day, he had to give up his humanity to survive. In desperation, the kid decided to kill all the monsters. On the 51st day, he arranged a shelter for himself and the skeleton of a deceased monster, where he lit a fire and continued to gain strength. Suddenly, a strange sign appeared in front of him, which said that he had raised his level to the 3rd. He clicked on the system screen and accepted the promotion. Since then, 7 years have passed, and his current level is 27th. He was killing hellish creatures alone without any hindrance. Even at that moment, these monsters were like worms because he killed them with one blow. It was the 24th year since he found himself in this crazy place. The guy managed to make himself a sword from an ore that he received from a steel knight, and with the help of this weapon, he calmly demolished the heads of these monsters. It was the 51st year, and the boy himself turned into a monster and beheaded a pathetic incarnation. On the 79th year and 365 days, this year, he was finally ready to meet the Demon King. This bastard had dragged him to hell, and the kid couldn't wait to blow his skull off. It was a fierce battle, but the guy did not spare his enemies. Soon he came across the gatekeeper of the Demon King, who promised to cut off his limbs and throw him to feed the wild animals. But the guy was not confused by these arrogant words, and he rushed into the face of danger. He stripped the monster of both hands and jumped back to the side. A fiery shard appeared in the air, the boy's assistant, who strongly recommended him to finish off this monster right away because he was a serious opponent. The demon himself was very angry because how did this arrogant boy dare to challenge the gatekeeper himself? Did he really lose his fear? While the demon was shaking the air, this same kid punched through the monster, and the reason for such a cruel act was due to the fact that the demon was too noisy. The monster could not believe his eyes because it was impossible, and after these words, he fell dead. Now that the black-haired man had killed the keeper of the gate, the shard was interested in what the guy was going to do next, because this act must have greatly angered the Demon King. 80 years have passed since he went to hell. During this time, he has fought many monsters to survive. Everyone has different reasons and stories for which they fell into this terrible place. Han Da-song found himself in a strange place, surrounded by darkness and shadows. He was confused and disoriented, wondering how he ended up in this unfamiliar land. As he tried to piece together his memories, he realized that he was standing in front of the powerful Demon King. The demon had brought him here for a reason, and Han Da-song was determined to find out what that reason was. As he stood before the Demon King, Han Da-song couldn't help but feel a sense of fear and unease. The Shard, a powerful demon who was with him, warned him not to do anything foolish, but Han Da-song was not willing to back down without a fight. He raised his sword and rushed forward, ready to do battle. To his surprise, instead of the Demon King, he saw a drip, and suddenly he was thrown into a sweat. The next thing he knew, he was lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses. He was confused and disoriented, not understanding how he had ended up there. As he struggled to make sense of his situation, he slowly began to remember what had happened. He had been battling the Demon King, and somehow he had emerged victorious. But now he was back in the real world, and he wasn't sure how to feel about it. As he struggled to come to terms with his new reality, he was visited by a woman who was crying tears of joy. She was overjoyed that he had woken up from his coma, and she thanked the doctors for their care. But Han Da-song was not happy. He had spent so many years fighting and struggling in that other world, and now he was back in reality with nothing to show for it. He felt angry and betrayed, and he was determined to find a way back to that other world, no matter what the cost. As he lay in his hospital bed, struggling to come to terms with his new reality, he couldn't help but wonder what had happened to him. Had it all been a dream? Or was there something more to it? He didn't know the answer, but he was determined to find out. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the air shifted and became tense. The exhausted boy, still recovering from his 10-year coma, watched as his mother pleaded with the bandits to let them go. His heart raced as he realized the severity of the situation. Without a second thought, a couple of more strong men burst into the room in order to calm the situation. They grabbed the boy by the hands, but he refused to give up without a fight. He threatened to kill everyone present if they did not let him go. The rage in his face was palpable as he struggled against their hold. In the midst of this chaos, something else caught his attention. Yellow flashes of thunder and lightning illuminated the sky outside the window. A hellish wormhole had opened up, but what was it doing here? As he struggled to break free, they injected him with a sedative, causing him to lose consciousness. The next day, breaking news reported the opening of the mysterious gate and how a team of hunters had taken control of the situation. The man in the office demanded to be informed immediately of the completion of the mission, promising to take care of the rest himself. Later, an unknown person entered the ward, and the boy in the jacket was surprised to see his old friend Chang-ho. It had been 10 long years since the black-haired man had lost consciousness. Chang-ho informed him that while he had been unconscious, his mother had worked 2 jobs to take care of him. Now, the most important thing was for the boy to recover as soon as possible and return to his former self. Chang-ho had left him a job, and he thanked him for it. However, as he walked with his mother, he realized that he could become a burden to his family. He had fought for a chance to survive in hell, but in reality, he had to take responsibility for his family and help her. His thoughts were interrupted when they were confronted by bandits who had been looking for his mother. The situation escalated quickly, and the boy watched in horror as the men threatened his mother and demanded their money back. As the tension rose, the boy realized that he could not let his mother suffer. He took a deep breath and stood up to the bullies, telling them to back off. His mother looked at him with pride as he stood up for her. The bandits, however, were not going to be deterred by a young boy. They continued to threaten them, but the boy refused to give in. In the end, the bandits backed off, realizing that they were no match for the determination of a young boy who would do anything to protect his family. As they walked away, his mother hugged him tightly, grateful for his bravery. The boy smiled, knowing that he had a long road ahead of him, but he was ready to face it, whatever it may bring. He had already gone for the 2nd year, but the bully could not understand how she was not ashamed in front of the child. With these conclusions, he struck her in the face. Han Da-song, who was sitting on a wheelchair, could not stand this mockery and called these damn bastards to him. The hooligans did not hear the squeak of a small mutt and asked to repeat it. But the boy happily fulfilled their requests. The mother tried to stop her son, but he was already grabbed by the collar and lifted off the ground. The mother, in tears, asked Dustin to apologize and tried to justify him in the face of the bandits because the boy was just a patient. Despite all the mother's attempts to prevent bloodshed, the exhausted boy continued to insult the vile insects in his sight. Bugai realized that the kid was clearly in trouble with his head since he continued to climb into trouble, but still, Molta's words offended him greatly, and he decided to show which of them was a real insect. After that, the black-haired man went flying, but it didn't end there because according to him, insects need to be crushed. He began to trample on the defenseless young man while Handesong was being beaten. He reproached himself for the fact that his body was in such a deplorable state because if not for this. The tearful girl tried to stop what was happening, but to no avail. The man continued to kick the boy, demanding that he call him again if he was not scared. The kid kept calling him names in his mind because if they were in hell right now, there would be nothing left of the man for a long time. At this moment, a long-forgotten system screen appeared in front of the black-haired man. She offered him to take part in a divine quest and also warned that in case of refusal, the reward would not be received. The boy's eyes lit up with hope. He no longer paid attention to everything that was happening. He was only interested in the divine quest. With the window of choice suddenly appearing, his doubts were short-lived because these windows were the only thing that helped him survive in hell for all 8 and 6 years. The quest was accepted. He did not immediately understand what was happening. For some reason, everything froze, namely time. The task he accepted is called Body Restoration. The difficulty level of this quest is the lowest. All he needs to do is get to the marked destination in 1 hour. As a reward, he will be given a medicine to restore the perfect state, as well as 10% to health. The guy was very surprised. Can his body really be returned to its previous state? A red marker appeared in front of him, notifying him that he should overcome 10 meters. The black-haired man still couldn't believe his eyes. It turns out if he gets to that place, he will return himself. Smiling, the kid said that he would get there no matter what it cost him, even if he crawled. The main thing was that he would be returned to his former state. Through a stream of sweat, the guy continued to crawl with all his might. It's hard for him to believe that the one who conquered everyone in hell ate how to cope with such a trifle. There are about 18 minutes left before the end of the task, but at this speed, he will never be able to get there on time, and one person will not get through it. So Handesong decided to think rationally. If we take into account that the system cannot issue a mission that cannot be completed, in this case, everything is exactly the same. There must be some solution. Handesong couldn't believe his luck. It seemed like the system was giving him a second chance at life. He had been dealt a bad hand with his illness and the constant bullying, but now he had a chance to change things.